Welcome to the PreSnap Podcast, presented by LineStar. All things fantasy football with a sprinkle of sports betting analysis. Week 5, Monday Night Football, the Raiders at the Chiefs in this AFC West showdown alongside Tyler Weeman. I'm Shannon Somerville. A lot to get to on the show today. We've got sleeper picks, we've got touchdown calls, we've got prop bets, game analysis, and our game picks for this Monday Night Football showdown. It's always been a shootout between these two squads. Now, the Chiefs have pretty much owned this series. Mahomes is 7-1 against the Raiders, a much different looking Raiders team, though, this time around. What are your overall first impressions when you look at this matchup?
Overall, I am excited for this game.
Yeah.
It is not going to be like what we have seen on Sunday and Thursday game this week. So pretty much we've seen inept offenses for primetime games this week, and I think we're going to see some points here.
The Raiders 1-3 on the year. However, they've been a bit unlucky. Those 3 losses came by 6 points or less. Yep. So we could be looking at a pretty good game despite what that record indicates for the Raiders. Meanwhile, the Chiefs have been rolling. They really haven't taken their foot off the pedal there. They look great. They looked great against the Bucs. So got a lot to look forward to in this game for today. Let's take a look at some injuries before we get into the daily fantasy projections. SixScore.com is giving us the analysis here. We're first taking a look at the Chiefs offense with a SIX score of 91.4 versus the Raiders defense with a SIX score of 88.5. Now, offensive lineman Trey Smith is questionable with a pectoral issue for the Chiefs, and wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster questionable with a hamstring injury. However, he is expected to play. Kicker Harrison Butker is still out dealing with that ankle sprain. On the Raiders defense, linebacker Jayon Brown is out with a hamstring injury. Overall, though, both squads fairly healthy heading into this one. Raiders offense with a SIX score of 86.3 and the Chiefs defense 89.4, so relatively comparable there. Now, the Raiders offense, they're getting wide receiver Hunter Renfro back after he was out with a concussion. They also have tight end Foster Moreau questionable with a knee injury. The Chiefs defense, they're without linebacker Willie Gay, still sitting out for a suspension. And cornerback Trent McDuffie, he's on the IR with the hamstring injury. All in all, this is a fairly clean injury report. So is there anything that sticks out to you in terms of an advantage or disadvantages for both teams?
Advantage or disadvantage, no. However, there is some key news here. Juju, outside of Kelsey, second on targets for the Chiefs. So obviously we need to make sure he's in, but I do like him. And then on the other side of the ball, Foster Moreau, he's played a decent amount. And so if they have him back, he could be kind of a sneaky option.
So we'll keep updating that throughout the day on linestarapp.com. So make sure you be sure to check all the injuries at SixScore.com as well to keep you updated on the injury front. Super important when you're playing daily fantasy. Daily fantasy projections for Monday Night Football. Getting ready for these contests, we'll first take a look at the Chiefs and some valuable assets for your daily fantasy lineup. Patrick Mahomes, certainly one of them. He's having a monster season. He's owned the Raiders 7-1 against them with an average of 37.4 points per game. He's absolutely torched them. Meanwhile, the Raiders are allowing the 9th most passing yards per game in the NFL. This isn't the defense that we were kind of expecting at the start of the season. They definitely invested a lot into it. However, they just haven't really come together. And Patrick Mahomes, he just took it to the Bucs last week, who have a top 5 defense. What do you expect from Mahomes tonight?
Yeah, and I think the Raiders defense will come around a little bit, but they're definitely slow to kind of pick up the pieces here and get going. And Mahomes is absolutely always in play. Yeah. And so it's no surprise that he is once again here. As far as a captain spot, I don't like putting quarterbacks in the captain. Usually if they do well, there's a receiver that outscores them anyways, and usually at a cheaper price. So I would like to go one of his pass catchers instead of putting him in a captain spot.
One of Mahomes' favorite targets always is tight end Travis Kelsey. And he is another guy who has absolutely owned the Raiders in 3 of 4 games, 100 receiving yards in 3 of 4 of them. Pretty good numbers there. Plus, he torched the Bucs last week. 9 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown in that one. So seems like they are finding their rhythm on offense. And Kelsey's always dangerous, especially in the red zone.
Yeah, and Raiders are 21st versus the tight end, so they aren't great versus the tight end. Kelsey has crushed them, like you said in the past. Kelsey is my favorite captain or MVP option today. He will come in as one of the higher owned in that position, likely second behind Mahomes. But I'm not really worried about that ownership there. I do like Kelsey quite a bit.
Another receiver we're looking at is Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and he's led the Chiefs receivers in routes run in each of the 4 games. Even though he's third in most of the other categories, targets, receptions, receiving yards, he is still a huge deep threat. And going up against this Raiders passing defense that hasn't been as good, allowing the 9th most passing yards in the NFL. And the Raiders have been susceptible to those big chunk yardage plays that MVS has dominated.
Yeah, and that's my whole thing here with why I really like MVS. So the Raiders are 8th in 40-plus, or tied for 8th in 40-plus yards allowed per play. And that is with them having one less play. Or one less game than everybody else. So they are allowing a lot of big plays. MVS is 6'4" and runs like a cheetah.
Yeah.
So I really like his ability here to get deep and be a very low-owned sleeper captain or MVP here. I don't like him as much as a flex play, just because if he has a big game, you know, like you'll probably want him in the captain spot. But I do like him as a kind of sleeper, low-owned captain.
Speaking of sleepers, who are you looking at on the Chiefs as potential sleepers for tonight's game?
So there's a couple. One, you always kind of have to look at the tight end just because coaches like to scheme them in the red zone. So Jody Fortson or Noah Gray, both are the tight end 2 and 3, and they've both been used in the red zone quite a bit. Gray is the safer option because he's at least averaging 2 targets a game. Fortson has literally been either touchdown or hasn't caught a pass. So I think Gray is the cheaper or the safer one. Not cheaper, he's slightly more expensive, but I like them both. And the other one is Sky Moore. Sky Moore played 28% of the snaps last week, so he finally got some snap share here, and they had 4 targets for him. So when he is in the game, they tried to draw some plays up for him. If that snap count comes up a little bit, he's super interesting.
Let's take a look at the Raiders now, and a valuable asset for them is Derek Carr, who despite that record of 1-3, he's actually top 10 in passing yards, passing touchdowns, and air yards as well. We sometimes sleep on Derek Carr a little bit, but he can get those numbers, especially from a fantasy perspective. What do you see for him tonight going up against a Chief defense that's good, but they've also struggled a bit in the passing game, and knowing that he's got to go toe-to-toe with Mahomes, so he's got to be putting up those numbers?
Yeah, I like Carr. This game could easily be a shootout, as we talked about, and really both quarterbacks are in play. Once again, though, I don't love him at a captain or MVP spot. I just don't like putting quarterbacks in those positions. They're usually a little bit higher owned. And Carr, who doesn't really run, for him to be a captain, he needs to throw for, 300 plus yards and 4 touchdowns and spread the ball around to 4 different receivers for those touchdowns. But I like him. He's definitely in play.
How do you feel about Devante Adams? He's been a bit boom or bust this season. 2 games he was over 100 yards. 2 games he was under 40 yards. Sometimes you don't know what you're getting with him. However, we know his talent is certainly there. And going up against the Chiefs passing defense, if you can point to any Achilles heel in that team, it's probably the passing defense. What do you see for Devante Adams in terms of fantasy, and will he be worth the price tag that will be associated with that?
I think he has a little harder of a matchup than, say, Darren Waller or Hunter Renfro. But he has a huge target share on this team. The one guy that is not affected by more pieces getting healthy and Hunter Renfro coming back, possibly Fosterman Morneau, is Devante Adams. He's going to get his targets no matter what. So I don't worry that these guys are coming back. Mm-hmm. It's just, will he beat the coverage today or not?
Right.
And he likely will. He does most games. Really doesn't matter who he's playing. Mm-hmm. He can beat every single team in the league.
Right. He had 101 last week against Denver. He's actually leading the league in terms of coverage against wide receivers. So if he can do it against Denver.
Absolutely. And he's had a couple games with a giant target volume. Sure. So he could absolutely do that again today.
Darren Waller, you mentioned possibly having a better matchup than Adams here. He's coming off back-to-back games where he had under 25 receiving yards, though. What do you like about this play for daily fantasy?
Yeah, Darren Waller, I mean, he's had a very anticlimactic start so far to the season here. But he is extremely talented. He is super good. And it's only a matter of time until he has a huge game where he kind of busts out. The one thing I would say is that he's had really big games versus the Chiefs. So I could easily see him finally kind of stepping up this game and having a big game. And I think he's going to go way under-owned as far as a captain or MVP. And he absolutely has the ability for 100 yards and a touchdown.
With Hunter Renfro back from concussion, this will be the first time you've got Adams, Waller, and Renfro all together since week 2. Mm-hmm. How does that impact the way you look at these? Because on the one hand, it could be, they're not getting as many targets because they have to split them between the 3. On the other hand, it could be taking coverage off of
totally. And I think Waller and Renfro are definitely more affected by having both of them there. Mm-hmm. They both, work a little more in the similar positions of the field, so they're more likely to kind of share targets than Adams is. But I think both of them are in a good spot. I am a little worried about Renfro just going a little over-owned today.
Okay.
He is back. I expect him to come back into a full kind of snap share and target share. But there's other guys there that kind of play a lot that we could go to. So
speaking of that, who are the other guys you're looking at on the Raiders that could be nice sleeper options for you?
Yeah, so we have Mac Hollins and Foster Morneau if he plays. But Mac Hollins is playing just as much as Hunter Renfro prior to Renfro getting hurt. He's going to be there again tonight. He's probably going to get that same type of snap share. So I like him at a cheaper price. Renfro is definitely the better receiver, but we kind of have to play the game and play the ownership game here. And I think Mac Hollins is just going under-owned.
So some great options there for you in daily fantasy. Remember, you can find out more and all of our stats and information available on linestarapp.com. Make sure you check it out and lock in your subscription. $29.99 per month will get you all of the information you need to make decisions for your fantasy football. And also, we've got a new Props Edge tool that'll help you dominate the props game as well. Lineup Optimizer. It's going to help you go out and win some money in these big contests. Check it out. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, be sure to like this video if you're enjoying our content, sign up for notifications, and just be sure you're subscribed to our channel. Now it's time for our touchdown calls of the game. Tyler, where are you going for an anytime touchdown Monday Night Football AFC West matchup, Raiders-Chiefs?
Going with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. MVS is on the field more than any other wide receiver. He's 6'4". He runs like a cheetah. And the Raiders are tied for 8th with the most 40-plus yard plays allowed. And they've also done this in one less game than everybody else. It's only a matter of time between Mahomes and these two connect on a deep ball, and I think it's going to happen tonight versus a bottom 10D.
I got Raiders wide receiver Devante Adams for an anytime touchdown, plus 125. Adams has 13 red zone targets. That leads all receivers in the NFL. He's also the top target for Derek Carr. Going up against this Chiefs defense that has allowed the most touchdowns per game of any team through week 4. He's in a good spot. Give me an anytime touchdown for Devante Adams. Now it's time for our prop bets of the game. Prop bets for Monday Night Football. Tyler, who you got for this one?
I'm going back to MVS. We're going Marquez Valdez-Scantling for over 41.5 receiving yards. That's up minus 115. MVS is on the field all the time. He's hit 41.5 in 3 of 4 games with Mahomes. And the Raiders love to give up big plays, which is his bread and butter. So I think 41.5 is just way too low.
You're sticking with MVS. I'm sticking with Raiders wide receiver Devante Adams. Over 79.5 receiving yards. That is minus 115. Yeah, he had over 100 yards against the Denver defense that ranks first in passing yards allowed to their opponent. Chiefs pass defense been a weak point for them. They rank 29th in DVOA versus opponents with wide receiver number 1. So defensive adjusted value, again, over average, takes into account quality of opponents. So the fact that they rank 29th in that category, oh my gosh, Devante Adams is in a great matchup. I like this one for today. I also like receptions as well, but we'll keep it to the Devante Adams over 79.5 receiving yards.
I did see that receptions for him. It was the line's a little lower than I thought it would be.
It's a 6.5.
Yeah.
And then on Underdog, it's higher than I thought it would be.
So, yeah, I would take it 6.5 was good. Any higher, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
However, it's still a good pick. I do like Devante Adams a lot tonight. So,
he's a target monster. They're going to go to him.
Let's see if they – I mean, the other logic there is the Chiefs are going to put up points. You're going to have to go toe-to-toe with Mahomes, most likely playing from behind. So, you're going to have to take shots down the field to Devante Adams. So
totally.
Now it's time for our game picks. The Chiefs are 7-point home favorites in this AFC West showdown. Who do you like for this one?
So I would be taking the +7. Money line, I do like the Chiefs. And let's go over. Let's just have a shootout.
Let's have a shootout. I agree with you. I'm going Chiefs and... yeah, Chiefs. Mahomes 7-1 against the Raiders, 3-1 versus the Raiders at Arrowhead, and points per game 37.4. I'm with you on the over. Just the simple fact that the Chiefs are averaging 32.3, Raiders 24 points per game. Yeah, they're going over that 51.5. These are two very explosive, and they've always had high-scoring games. In fact, over has hit the last 4 meetings.
I'm excited that we might actually see some offense on a primetime game.
We've been a little deprived in that department.
How bad was that Denver and Indianapolis game?
I think, that was probably, and I texted you too. I said, I think this is the worst game of football I've seen in quite a while.
I wanted to turn off the game, but I was
You're
like,
I have to for work purposes.
I can't.
But it was pretty bad. And you have been, I have to give you credit. You have been saying how you haven't liked Russell Wilson at all. You think he's been a little overrated, and perhaps he's getting exposed now that he is no longer in that Seattle Seahawks system with some talent around him. And
you know, it hurts to say that too, because in best ball drafts, I think Wilson is my highest owned quarterback. I was high on him coming into the season, and I flipped quick.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, they've got to respond. We'll see how he responds, because he has definitely been taking a lot of heat. Rightfully so. They paid him a lot of money to get that team turned around on offense, and
he owes Pete Carroll a big check. Little thank you over to Pete Carroll.
Maybe a little edible arrangement or something.
It's got to be a lot more than that. He needs a money tree.
Oh, God. Well, that's going to do it for us in our Monday Night Football preview. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and sign up for notifications. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. We will see you guys next time. Enjoy the game. Let's hope it's a shootout this time.
Let's go. Thanks, guys. Bye.